So in last session, we discussed dependency injection of secondary type objects. Okay, in dependency injection, we have done basic dependency injection of various data types, dependency injection of integers, strings, date, calendar kind of stuff we didn't see, but we will check. Arrays also we tried, collections we tried. But when we have secondary data types as a dependency, just okay. That's right, yeah. So then we started how to inject secondary types. So when we have secondary type dependency, we learned that instead of injecting directly secondary type dependency into same type here, instead of that we learned if we can have an interface. Into that interface, if I inject it, it will be comfortable to me to change the implementation in future. That we realized through example also, and we called it as runtime polymorphism, dependency injection with the runtime polymorphism. Okay, so we are clear till there, right? Now let me start with the stereotypes. Okay, let me start with the stereotypes. Stereotypes, and after the stereotypes we will see auto wiring concept also. Stereotypes, stereotypes annotations, we have few annotations given. Okay, stereotype annotations has been given, very important annotations. Okay, stereotype annotations are very important annotations. Okay, remember that this session will be very important. So during using annotations, right, till now we see how to create objects just by configuring into XML file. The old approach we learned is how to create POSO classes, maybe your controller or business DAO classes. We configured all of them into XML file and we loaded into container. That is what we see. Maybe these all are classes, controller, business, DAO, and loading into XML file, and that XML file finally we are loading into IOC container. This is what we see. Till now, this is how we ran our examples. Now, we'll go with the new way of coding, which is using in real time currently. This is very old approach. In old days, we used to do this. Instead of configuring in XML file to create object for your controller or business or DAO, without configuring your class into XML file, also you can create object. But there should be a connection between your IOC and the controller or business or DAO. When you implement your classes and when you try to start your IOC container, when you start your IOC container, when you start your IOC container, Via XML file, it is able to recognize there is a controller class, business class, and DO class, and it is able to pick up these classes and it can able to create objects. Now, in these stereotypes, we will be avoiding XML based configurations. These controller business DO configurations we never do in XML file. We don't do in XML file. We will avoid them. We will avoid these configurations here. And once we go through Spring Boot, we avoid XML file also. We completely avoid this part. This portion we completely avoid. But later I'll show you. For now, I'll show you how to avoid this classes configuration from XML file. I don't want to do any class configuration in XML file. Without XML file configuration, without configuring my classes into XML file, also I want to start IOC and I want to create objects. There, the stereotypes will help you. How they will help? Listen carefully. In stereotypes, just a minute, please. In stereotypes, we have few annotations. Names are component, at the rate controller, or at the rate rest controller, at the rate service, at the rate repository, or at the rate rest repository, and at the rate configuration. In bracket, I am adding combination at the rate B. Okay, consider this is like a Dolo 650, which is having combination of paracetamol and other. Like this at the rate configuration annotation will work with the combination of at the rate B. Okay. Okay, we'll discuss very in detail about it later. So this many stereotype annotations we have: component, controller, service, repository, rest repository, at the rate configuration. Every annotation is important here. We call all these annotations as stereotype annotations. What we call stereotype annotations. These annotations are stereotype annotations. If you understand all these annotations, right, I think you can able to code, or you'll understand the coding almost 50% of Spring Boot. Okay, so these are the annotations: simple component, controller, or alternate to controller rest controller, or at the rate service, at the rate repository or rest repository, at the rate configuration. Where do we use them? In which layer? For which classes we use them? As always, we are talking about MVC. In MVC only we are going to use anything. So the controller and rest controller annotations we use in which layer? In this name itself, they are telling that they are for controller. In MVC for controller layer. Okay, controller. And service for service layer only, or you can say business for your business class. Service annotation for your business class, business classes. Repository, again name itself saying they are for repository operations, means DB operations. So this is for DAO. These two are for DAO layer. What about these two extra component and configuration? Configuration is for, if you remember the example, For the architecture I given connection pool we created to provide connections to div. So if you have any such configurations, majorly connection pools we created. So I'm giving example or directly saying connection pools we create using configuration. But not only for connection pool, but for a straight away example to implement or to remember it easily. To create connection pool kind of stuff, we use configuration. Again, more in detail we will learn. And what about component? So for my applications to create connection pools, configuration will help with @bean. To create database implementation, save operation or delete CRUD operations, repository annotation will help. To write my business logic @service will help. To implement controller classes @controller or REST controller will help. What about component? Sometimes some miscellaneous classes like validation classes or some extra business logic I have, some extra validations I have, or some file read operations I have, some extra stuff apart from controller job, business job, DO job I want to do. That you can do it in component class. File read write operations if you have any stuff or validation stuff. You may use it for if you want to implement any validators or some file readers, etc. If you have any such stuff, you may use component, which means or you don't understand it in a different way, component is going to provide validators help or file readers help. It is not going to provide anything. It is something like your controller service annotation only. But for controller we have a separate specific annotation. For business we have DO, we have for configurations we have. In case if you have any extra utility classes, generally in real time we call them utils. Any extra utilities if you want to write, for that utilities we will use component annotation. Okay, why all these annotations are for? How they helps? Where do I need to put them? Should I keep them inside XML file? Or what is the exact place where I can use them? And all these stereotype annotations are class level annotations. Class level annotations. On top of class name only we will put them. Class level annotations. All these stereotype annotations are class level annotations, which means you can put them on top of your class. Consider here I have a registration form, student registration I have, and from here I am sending data name, email, phone number, pin code. This is my front end form. I want to save this data into database, so I want to implement backend classes. This is my view and I want to implement backend classes. So there we will use these annotations. Okay. So during implementation of backend classes, first we'll be writing controller class to read this data. So I need a controller here, something student controller. While writing this class, right? Or let's name it class student controller. If it is a controller class, these annotations are controller class level annotations, stereotypes. Where do I can place them? Class level means on top of class. For controller, you can use @controller or at the rate rest controller here. Okay, don't ask me what are the differences. We will discuss them later. But understand how these annotations will help first. The basic primary feature of these annotations, let's try to understand. So these annotations are class level annotations. Controller or rest controller. On top of controller you put them. Okay. So when I use them, controller or rest controller, that means this is the class which is going to help for the front end. So whatever data you are getting from the front end, you will receive in this controller class. Then from here we need to take it forward to business. So I need a business class here. Public class business, student business, or student service. Business or service. Use Generally we use service naming convention, but we will have business logic here. So I have a student service class. On top of service class, which annotation we should use at the rate service. So this is the business class. Controller will talk with business. And I want to do CRUD operations on database. So I need a DAO class. Public class student to DAO. Here I want to do all my CRUD operations. Here you can use at the rate repository or rest repository. Class level annotations for DAO class. And what about other two annotations? Component and configurations are left. So when DAO wants to connect with the database, from database I need to procure connections into connection pool. I need to fetch connections into connection pool. So to create that kind of configuration class, on top of configuration class, we will use at the rate public class, maybe something DB configuration class. Here we will use at the rate configuration. And I told you, right, combination. We'll go with combination. Inside this class, we will use at the rate B. Configuration with the at the rate B. Those two are having a relationship. With the combination only we will use. Okay. For configurations kind of stuff, I'll use configuration. Okay, that is also good. And component, as I said, any utilities. Let's say I want to write some data into file also here. One Excel file I want to generate. While student registration, not only in the database, using one Excel file I want to track the data. So I have some utility class here. Public class, something Excel utility. Or some validations I want to apply. Name, email kind of validations I want to. Phone number validations, pin code validations I want to do. Or maybe a validator, field validator class. anything. I'm just giving example. On top of such classes, you can use at the rate component. At the rate component. Why can't I use service here? You can use component is similar like service only, but to tell the clear difference, which class is for which purpose, we have different set of annotations. Okay. So while writing my controller class, you are telling me to use controller annotation, fine. For business service annotation, for DAO repository, for configurations, configuration annotation with at the rate B. And for any utilities, you are saying to me to use component. Good. Finally, what they do if I do like this? If I implement all my POSO classes, these all are POSOs, right? As we know, these all are POSOs. Simple Java classes. On top of them, we are putting these annotations. So if all these are POSOs, and if I put these annotations, how my container will create objects for them? Do I need to configure all these classes into XML? End of the day, do I need to take one XML and configure all of them here? If you don't have this annotation, yes, the answer is yes. You need to configure all your classes into XML file. But as we introduced annotations here, now the answer is no. You need not to configure these classes here. Instead of putting these classes into XML file, just you need to put component scan here. There is a tag called component scan based package. The package name we give here. You know, right? We are creating packages inside packages. We are putting them. If base package is com.rbu, common package name for all the classes, you can put com.rbu.star something like this. See, something is scanning here, like a scanner. Like when we go for MRI scanning or CT scanning, they scan entire body. The machine will scan the entire body, every organ of your body, heart, liver, everything. Similarly, this will function in the same way CT scan. When we put component scan, it will go each and every part of this package. It will go each and every part of this package and it will scan them. So let's say this controller classes, service classes, BOO classes, and your component classes are being part of this com.rb, all your classes. What it will do, it will scan them first. It will scan all the classes. It will apply scanning everywhere. Once it is scanned, if it find the stereotype annotations on top of them, if it finds stereotype annotations, like MRI scanning is happening, if it finds something, it will record on a scan copy. The doctor will inspect what's happened to that particular organ. So it will scan each and every class. If that class mentioned with this stereotype annotations, right, immediately it will pick up that class. So all these classes are stereotyped, are having stereotyped annotations. When you put this, right, when you put this and load it into IOC container, your application context. When you load this XML into IOC container, you mentioned here component scan of this package. IOC container will do what? Immediately it will start scanning this package, and if it find any classes with the stereotypes, right? Without the stereotypes, if it find, it won't do anything with them. Just leave them as it is. It will not touch them. If this class doesn't have this annotation, it will not touch this class. Even it will not consider like your Spring class. It will consider maybe developer written this class, or developer might have some different purpose. Maybe he returned that class. Let's ignore it. IOC will ignore it. But if you put stereotype annotation, it will pick this class. It will pick and immediately it will create object. Then IOC will create objects here. It will perform component scan, then it will create your student controller object. For student controller one object it will create. Your student service object it will create. Your student repository or DO object it will create. And using @bean you create a dbconfig class. dbconfig class or configuration class you created. For that one it will create one object, comma, @bean we used. Under @bean it will create one more object. And you have Excel file class or field validation classes. For them also it will create a object. So what IOC will do? IOC will perform component scanning on your package. It will scan all your packages inside this com.rbu, whatever packages you have. Which means com.rbu.web package or controller package for controller, business package for services, DAO package for repositories, and for configurations you may have config package. For components you may have vital package. Any child packages inside com.rbu, it will scan them. It will scan all your classes and immediately it will start creation objects. Earlier as a developer, I used to configure all my classes into XML file. Now I can get some relax here. I can feel that relax here. I need not to put any bean class here. I'm happy. XML or file configurations are little weird configurations for us, right? Or you may do some mistakes in configurations. What Spring is doing, slowly it is automating it. It is saying you are a developer, just focus on your code here and mention this annotations bus and you don't do anything. I will scan your classes and I'll create objects. Instead, you coming and registering here, I'll come and pick your class. Instead of it is configuring here IOC in reverse way, it will go to your packages and it will scan them. Both are same. End of the day, we need object. Either through XML configurations you read or create or automatically you create. To do it in any way, but create the objects. IOC will do that. IOC will do that. That's why these annotations we are using in real time during development, right? As a developer, what I do or what all Spring developers will do when they have a front end screen, for that front end screen, immediately developer will start implementing controller. While starting this controller itself, he will mention controller annotation. And while writing business, he will mention service annotation. While writing DAO repository annotation. And if any configurations required configuration for validations or any other stuff, they will use component annotation. We'll put, while writing class itself, we'll put annotation and we will focus on our code. Here may be a read operation method I required. I'll write that method here. Then some business operation method, create some method I required here. I'll just shift my focus to this method. Maybe here I need a save operation. I'll shift my focus to save method. I'll just focus on my coding instead of configurations. I need not to do any configuration. I can bit relax here. One single form. For one single form, I avoided almost 3-4 classes configuration in XML file. Imagine if you have thousands of classes. We avoided all the thousands of XML configurations here. Avoiding thousands of XMLs configurations is not only the benefit, As you are not doing configurations here manually, there is no way of disturbance. Maybe Vasu put 5 beans configurations here, while Naveen also doing 5 configurations and accidentally I deleted his code. Generally that will not happen, but I did without noticing. So his code might disturb. Why should touch his configurations? Need not. If it is through annotations when you do zero configurations I am doing here. Vasu doing nothing. Naveen also do nothing here. Or Vinod, whoever it is, they do nothing here. They don't touch this file. So no way of confusions, no way of creating disturbances. And if we think in a bigger picture, we are avoiding manual stuff here. We automated it. We automated it. Always automation will give better result. Always automation will give better result than the manual configurations. If you manufacture a car, I told you already, right? If you manufacture a car manually, we may not produce the same quality again for next car. But if you depends on robots, many car factories are using robots nowadays. They will provide same quality. They will provide same quality in the car when robots designed it because robots are automated. They don't even miss single fraction. They make exactly same piece again and again and again. In such a way, robots will work because they are not humans. They will not have emotions. They don't miss any fractions. Whatever we have given instructions, with same instructions only it will work. Similar way, here IOC also will take your command here, whichever you mentioned, then it will go and scan your packages, it will create objects for you. So here how many classes I can have? It's up to your application. You may have 10 classes, 100 classes, 1000 classes, or 5000 classes. Any number of classes. It will scan all of them and it will create objects. You need not to put even single class configuration in XML file. Do you see it is useful or not? Do you see it is useful or not? Earlier, we used to do a lot of XML configuration stuff. Now I'm saying we can avoid it. Do you see is it useful or not? Yes, of course it is useful. Very, very important topic. Okay. So let me give you example of the stereotype. Very, 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 very important discussion. Okay. So from log also we have examples for this stereotype. Of course, this example I'll give it to you, but if you are eager to practice, okay, pick this example. Example number 90. Okay, take this example. Now, let me create, see, lot of XML stuff I did here. Generally nowadays in real time, we don't even put a single line configuration here. But why we learn? As we learn, we can able to discuss about the difference and we can see the pain and no pain. Okay, so let me create a simple Java project. Stereotypes. Finish it. Build path. Let me add Spring jar files. Please observe here, same package structures I'll create. Some dummy classes I'll create time being, okay? com.rbu.web or REST or API. You may put any naming convention. Generally, we put web if it is a web application. If you are giving REST endpoints, we'll create REST package, okay? Consider this is web. Here we will put controllers. For business classes, we will use naming convention like com.rbu.service. Inside service package, we will put business classes. And for DAO classes, we will use a repository package naming convention, okay? Repository. Or you may call it DAO. Business and service are same. Repository and DAO are same, okay? And for some utility classes, I'll create one util package. And for configurations, I'll be creating one configuration package. Majorly, you will be having how many packages? Web, service, repository, configuration, and utils. Observe any application. You will see such a naming conventions. Web for controller, service for business logic, repository for DAO classes, config for configurations, util for extra utility classes, helper classes in other words. Now, let me put some dummy classes here, like student controller. Are you guys following me? Am I confusing you? No, right? Yeah. Yeah. Right. So controller, on top of controller, put controller annotation. See, it is imported. Controller annotation is imported from ORG Spring Framework stereotype package. Under the stereotype package, we have this controller class. Okay, good. And just to override default constructor to show you how automatically this object is created. Right, service class, student service. DAO class. Okay, on top of service, which annotation we should use? @service. Controller class with @controller. Service class with @service. Repository class. Repository with @repository annotation. And configuration class. Something dbconfig @configuration. And always combination, I said, right? So here you can put, here you can put something connection objects if you are creating. Maybe you are creating connection object or connection pool object, whatever it is. So this object and as well as at the rate bean method also automatically will execute it. And here also whatever objects, configuration objects you are creating, that configuration objects also it will create. That's why I said combination. Alone we don't create configuration without at the rate bean. Okay, remember that. Excuse me. And one util class. Okay, so something a validator or form validations component. Okay, I created my classes with stereotype annotation. Now what next? Configure the package name. Root package, if you see, com.rbu is the root package. Generally, for any application, we will have similar root package name com.icca, com. Depends on application, HDFC or com.rbi. Then child packages it will have in between. Okay, so the com dot the organization name will be common for any application. So you can treat it as a root package. com.rb is the root package name for all the packages. Yeah, we should maintain always unique name for packages. Okay, unique name, and this is a standard. When we say standards, that is not strict. A standard that everybody follow. I should also follow, so that it is easy to understand what you have done. Okay, it is a common standard we everybody follow. Hmm. No, no, we'll discuss more depth about it. Okay, that is a again different topic. Okay, just to make sure you that from the first discussion itself, I want to make sure you use both the combinations. That's why. Like some drugs, we need to use with that combination only. We should not use with other combination. So people, I see many people are writing at the rate being with other combinations that are really not safe for the application. That way I'm strictly telling in my session configuration with at the rate being a strict combination. Okay, I'll tell you in detail about it. Okay, yeah. Now let's create XML file here. Resources, create your XML file here. But now in this XML file we will use XSD. I told you in XML we will maintain DTD or XSD. Schema we can use DTD use. DTD is the basic one, schema is the advanced one. So as we are using advanced annotations, right? We will use a schema based configuration. Just to copy XML schema, I'm opening it. Okay. So I need a XML file here. Create a XML file. Spring.xml. One XML namespace, context namespace I'm using here. Just XML, okay? XML reference. And here The main root tag is beans and close with beans tag. Between you can have beans here. Still if you want to create manual beans you can create, but not required. You need not use any bean here. To create objects of these classes you need not to put any bean. Instead of that, what you need to do, you need to scan them. To scan it you need to use this namespace, this XML namespace. Here we have some tags, we need to use the tag. What is the tag? In that namespace we have component scan tag. Component scan base package, com.rbu is my base package. Thereafter star or com.rbu, up to com.rbu also sufficient. Without star also might be work. That's it. Bus. Load this into your container and see how container will do. Let me write a main class here. Application context AP equal to new class path XML application context resources slash spring.xml. Load your XML and just start your container and see what it will do. So it started creating objects. Configuration object created, repository object created, student service object created, validation class object created, your controller object, and the connection object which is there inside at the rate b. That one also created. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All your 6 objects which are meant for your use case. All these objects it is creating without even single bean configuration here. No bean configured. But how it is functioning? When you load this XML file here, it will read this XML, and from this XML it is understanding you are asking to scan. You are asking to scan this package. Then it will understand, okay, developer might be used annotations. That's why he is asking me to scan and create objects. Okay, let me scan. Container will start scanning here. All these packages. com.rbu, inside rbu config package, repository, service, util, web. One by one, all packages it will scan. During the scanning of this package, it will read your class. Scanning package means read your class. During after reading, if your class contains any stereotype annotation, which is controller, service, repository, or configuration or component, any stereotype annotation, it will consider that like a Spring being and it will create object for you. It will consider that one as a Spring class and it will create object. It will understand, okay, developer asking me to create object for that classes. Let me create them. So it will start creating objects for them. Finally, all objects are available for you. For your use case, you have implemented these classes, it created objects. That's great, right? Instead you doing it, it is doing it for you without configurations. Okay, looking good. Do you see anything missing here? It is able to creating objects. Earlier, I used to prepare them and I used to connect them together via dependency injection. In earlier use case, in dependency injection concept, I used to create objects of them, student object or address object or location data object. I used to create them and I used to inject them. As I have control over the creation, injection also I was performing. I have control here. I am creating objects or reference is available. I am injecting it as well. Now this control not in my hand. Object creation is not in my hand. IOC is doing. So from now onwards, can't I perform this dependency injection? That should be your question. Earlier I was creating objects, so I have full control over the dependency injection. I can able to inject that beans. Now I'm not even creating objects. How I can inject it? Creation object is not a big deal. You created object for what purpose? You need to connect them. After object creation, you need to connect them. Controller should connect with the service. Service should able to connect with the DAO, or service may need to use component, and this bean may be required here. We need to connect them together, but I lost that control. Earlier, while I was driving manual car, I used to have control. I can apply gears and I can able to drive it. Now if it is a Tesla full autonomous car, just you need to set your destination. Now you don't have any control. Is it? Yes, of course it will give you a manual driving option also, but it become full autonomous. You need to set your destination, it will drive itself and it will take you to the destination. Still I need control here. It is creating objects, but I need to connect them together. I want to put some connection between them. How I can get that control here? That we will do it in next session. Okay, we'll do this part in next session. How I can connect them. Easily I can able to create objects, but how I can connect them? How to connect them? Question mark. How to connect them? How to connect them? Okay, we will see it in next session so that you will get conclusion. Okay, this way it is creating objects and connecting them. So they made our job simple. Okay, yeah, we call that concept as auto wiring. Okay, auto wiring. We'll discuss about it tomorrow.